Got my little
Hey
cup.
now.
Are we
Hi,
live?
everybody. We are live. Sharita, say hi, Sharita.
Hey,
I feel like
everybody.
your
How are
mom
you?
now. And of course, I'm Adam. And of course, we're at the Medium channel where we bring you the spirituality behind the message. And today we want to dive deep into what's going on astrologically and numerologically because that's our roadmap. Basically, what the numbers are doing and the stars are doing. It's basically spirit or the universe giving us some information, something that's tangible that we can wrap our heads around and we can look at and analyze and understand to give us a heads up of what's happening, what we need to do to get ready for this massive change that's already starting. But I have to tell you, and Sharita may or may not agree, but I think she's going to agree that we're just warming up. And that's why I want to have Sharita on. Like we'll have her again before the summer starts because that's going to be a really heavy time. And then the fall, then the winter. So together we're going to help you through all the chaos so you can find clarity and you can find order in your life and find your niche in this awakening that's going on. So in any event, see people are starting to come on. I usually like to give a couple minutes to let people get their notifications and want to come in live. But on that note, why don't we just start? You can start to introduce yourself, Sharita, and we can just start to get into this now,
All
I
right.
suppose.
Well, thank you as always for having me back on the
So,
Medium channel. And, at this point in time, it is all about the spirituality behind the message. And that is what we're doing here. Uh, if you have any, I guess some people know me, some people don't. So I guess we'll just talk like nobody knows me. That'll be the easiest way to handle it. So I'm Sharita Star. I am an astrologer and numerologist. My specialty is forecasting or any personal guidance that you may need. And I've also been just, because it always interests me, I've very deeply followed the astrology of America for many years now. And so I have a pretty interesting grip on what the country's forecast is, because just like any human, any entity in life, whether it be a business, a record, a book, a launch of any kind, and obviously everything, an entity includes what a country is. So our country, America, had a birthday, obviously way back in 1776, and we celebrate this every year on July 4th. So we have this map that we can look at for America, just like we do for any human being. And that's how we forecast. So we take that moment that something was either initiated or born, which in case would be a human, or if you launched a project, launched a business, whatever it is that you have as an entity in life. That has a point of initiation. So this becomes the map that we will follow as time will keep circulating around it. So it's like a constant. So there's all the positioning of the planets that fill that, make up that map. And that's from the astrology side of the coin. And then my other specialty is I fuse in numerology, because that's my other thing that I do. So I don't read one without the other. So I'm like your double threat, because you can't, as it was taught to me, they're both guided. The astrology and the numerology are both guided by the same planets. So if you're talking about astrology or numerology, you're talking about planetary energy. And as Adam just mentioned, it's, this is like quantum physics is what I kind of do. And a lot of people that get into law of attraction and different things like that, um, this is how you really work with it on a personal level, is understanding your own math, because this is just the way math is moving in the universe, but it has this planetary backbone of why we see it energetically. So
I've got a question.
already, I love questions. I love questions. Please ask
I
them.
mean, you're just such a freaking encyclopedia of all this. Where did you learn all this? Who's that teacher you were talking about?
That would be the late Linda Goodman.
Yeah, I remember her
That's who
coming up one
inspired
time.
me. I mean, that's she triggered it. And
Cool, cool.
it was her book, Star Signs, that it was given to me in my 20s, back when we don't really, we're still figuring out who we are and what we do. And then I was working with a New Age trade. I was working at a New Age trade show out in Denver, Colorado, round about my own first Saturn return, which is a time in your life when you really reach your first point of real strong maturity and understand your purpose and your direction in your life. And that is closing in on almost approaching 30, but it starts around, give or take, 27, 28 years of age. And I was working for a new age music company out in Denver, Colorado. And that's when I came across this deck of cards. And I was like, oh, wow, these have something to do with that book I have, Star Signs. And they were a deck of cards that were made to talk about the numerology that's the Chaldean numerology that is all discussed in Linda Goodman's Star Signs, which connects the dots back to the astrology. And that's where I learned planets guide both astrology and numerology. And that, astrology is not the horoscope in the newspaper. I mean, that's like a entertainment value. That is, I don't want to say it's, I can't swear on here, but it's BS. And let's say it's BS. It's such a, it's fluff. Horoscopes are fluff. They're not real astrology. It's not the hardcore, what I call hardcore astrology is when you're really got your birth chart. We have the time you're born, the place, the full birth date. We've got that map, and that is your gold. That's your map. That's what you want. Horoscopes are helpful, if they're written very well, but they're not the godsend, let's just put it that way. So that was how it all began for me. Was I was just approaching my Saturn return, and my Saturn happens to sit in my career and public life. So I was kind of loafing around in my 20s trying to figure things out. Wanted to be an actress at one point. That didn't pan out too well. And so I said to myself, I've got to go home. And I was living in New York City at the time. I'm like, I got to go home and read that book. So I pulled it out of my bookcase and I read it that summer cover to cover. And that was just before 9/11 happened. So that's how long I've been doing this. I read that book and it was like somebody turned on a faucet for me. That's all I could say to you. She says in the book, don't take my word for any of this, just apply it to people you know. And that's when I realized I had a database. I remembered everybody's birthday I had known since I was like 5. I mean, it was just like bizarro. And I was just like clicking with this and clicking with that. And I'm like, wow, that describes my grandparents and my, friends and this, that. And then I started examining famous people and I just got into this. And then about a year later, I started reading for people. And here I am 20 years later.
Thank you. That's so fascinating. Great story. So
It was not, I stumbled on this.
well, we know
It
there's no
happened to me. I didn't
coincidences,
happen to
right?
do it.
And we know that spirit leads us, when the student's ready, the master appears. And I know Linda Goodman is such a heavy hitter in all of this stuff and such an amazing.
She's I mean, what she understood was amazing. And
Yeah.
she loved this country. She understood a lot of things about this country. In fact, there's a few things she actually writes, and this is probably going to test some people's brain cells a little bit right now, what I'm going to say, but I didn't come up with this. She did. She says, of course, she wrote this back in the 80s, but she said that the United States and Russia will become the most spiritual countries on the planet, and we will lead the spiritual revolution.
I've seen that.
And I
Maybe
so
it was
believe that.
reserved from others. I've seen prophecies that, there'd be a big conflict, which is happening now, but the Russia and the US would wind up being
Well, we
allies.
gotta
And I've been hearing this over and over again.
we
So maybe give it 10 or 15 years. We have to get
exactly.
through all this stuff. But
Yeah.
anyway.
It won't happen overnight. Let's just put it that way.
Mm,
And we
unfortunately
all know
not,
we're on
no.
an awakening path on this planet. If you're not on board with understanding there's a huge awakening happen, then well, you're probably not listening to something like this anyway, because you're probably watching mainstream media. And I won't get I won't get too judgmental about any of that, because we're not supposed to be doing that in 2022, are we? As we're
That's right.
mastering the value of compassion. But
Uh,
we certainly need to be discerning our mainstream media these days and not
exactly.
believing it for what it is telling us. And that's a heavy transit going on in our country's chart right now, is that we are being misguided, we're illusioned, we're delusioned, and we don't understand what the truth is. The truth is being hidden from us. And that is a huge aspect in this country's chart right now, between the communications that we are receiving and how it affects our foreign affairs and what we think we're understanding by what we're being given. So that's a very important thing. And this aspect, and Adam has all these links. He's going to pop them into the chat or pop them into the comments. The current cycle that this country is in is called the title of the whole blog is Healing America from Within, Understanding a 7 Personal Year Cycle. Now we're in year 7 of a current 9-year span of time as a nation. So planet Neptune is in charge of 7, and that's where we're watching what is that planet doing in the country's natal chart right now. That planet is sitting in our area of communications. It's been sitting there since last July, which is when the cycle started. Cycles happen birthday to birthday. So if you're a person, your personal year starts on your birthday every year. We spin in time in 9 our entire life. Countries spending time in 9 all the time. Now they go through, obviously America's like, what, how old are we? Like 240 something years old now. So, I mean, we've gone through many cycles of spending time in 9. And the natal Neptune in this country is opposing where it is right now. It's in our House of Foreign Affairs. So we've always, as a nation, had to be extra discerning ever since we were born as a nation of what are we perceiving as the truth about what's happening outside of our own environment as a country. We've always, the average person in this country doesn't have the right information. They've been taught everything the wrong way. They don't understand the truth. And that's not really their fault, if they're just relying on, our education system is responsible for this. The media is responsible for this. But what's tricky about this country right now, and we're going to talk about a couple other things going on. And we've got some heavy hits. Like if America was a human being right now, I'd be like, yeah, Dad, you got some really you got some interesting stuff going on here. There's always a way through, but sometimes we're going to need a lot more patience than others. There's cycles come and cycles go, but the last time this aspect, and again, this is all I describe all of this in this article. The last time this Neptune opposing natal Neptune in the country was happening was during the Civil War. Now, what does that tell you? Now, when you're also looking at a planet like Neptune, you are looking at an outer planet, which means it doesn't move quickly. Like, we have a new moon and a full moon every month. That is an inner, that's not really a planet. Technically, they say it's not a planet, but it's the closest one that we see, right? And it moves through the zodiac in 1 month's time. That moon is always around the zodiac again. That's why we have a new moon and a full moon every month. It's the opposition and the alignment of the moon with the sun. That's the closest thing we're ever watching. The sun goes through one zodiac sign every month. Every 30 days, it changes the signs. And that's what takes us all the way around that 12-piece wheel that we look at. Now, Neptune spends years in one sign. So right now, Neptune's in Pisces. It's opposing the natal Neptune of the country, which is positioned at 22 degrees Virgo. Neptune right now is at 22. It just, I think, moved away. It's 23 degrees. But for the past few weeks here, especially since the interesting overseas event started happening with the Ukraine and Russia, Neptune it started to directly oppose our country's natal Neptune. So the way we were receiving our communications, our information, Neptune is a planet that requires everyone take a silent listen. It wants us to be observing. Take a step back. Maybe ask a question. Is that really the truth? You know what? That doesn't make any sense. I wonder if there's more to that. What could be hidden from us? What are they not telling us? Maybe it's the total opposite of what we're being told. So that's a huge aspect that's been going on over the past month for this country simultaneously as the first hit one of our Pluto return is happening. Now that's something, there's a video, I don't want to get into the whole, get down the whole rabbit hole of that again, but we'll touch upon it a little bit. There's a video back from November that I did that I really got into the nuts and bolts of the Pluto return. But the first hit one of that, Adam just popped that link into the comments. That's going on for 3 years in this country. This has never happened before. This is the first time America has ever experienced this kind of energy. So a Pluto return, or any planetary return, we call it a return in astrology. So again, go back to that map we've got. We got that solid map from the moment of initiation. And then when we're looking at current transits, when any outer planet or any planet comes back, like you have a lunar return, we all have a lunar return once a month. The moon will always touch back to our natal moon in our chart once a month. We have a solar return every birthday. That's what a birthday is. It's a solar return. It comes back to that natal point again. But with a planet like Pluto, which is, if you know your solar system, Pluto is all the way out there. He's way out there. He sees everything. He's like the big power guy, right? He's the wealth guy, the infinity guy. He's resources. He's all about, like, just like he sees the entire scope. It is the big gamut picture. That's what Pluto does. He encompasses everything else. I always refer to Pluto like he's like your eagle in your life. It's where you as a person would sit on top of a mountain in wherever it's positioned in your life, and then you look out at everything else. That's what Pluto does. He's just like that big eagle eye. Well, Pluto takes anywhere from 14 to 20 years to get through one sign. That's a long time. So it's taken, Pluto has never been ever, since America was born in 1776, Pluto's never been back to that natal point because this hasn't happened. It hadn't happened yet. Now, we've gone through many Saturn returns as a nation already, because that happens every 28 to 30 years. We keep having another Saturn return. For America, that's always when Saturn is back in Libra. We'll always have a Saturn return as a country. And you'll have that as a person. Every about 28 years of your life, your Saturn return will happen. So as this Neptune opposition is happening in our 7 personal years, it's just a very interesting kind of thing. We've got this Pluto return thing coming. Well, it just kicked off. And also, oddly enough, it was just everything that started to happen with Russia and Ukraine happened when the Neptune was in direct opposition to the natal in the chart, and we had hit one of Pluto. So Pluto came back to that 27-degree point, which I've shown this card because it's America needs to remember this about what we're doing here. We're trying to hold our scepters up, and I yeah, okay, you can see this. Whoops, I forget this thing is so funny looking. That's a scepter. This is what the 27 represents. We have a 27-degree Pluto and Capricorn as a country. So this is the energy connected to that. This is what we're doing as a country right now. We're trying to raise ourselves back up. But because Pluto is this planet that, again, it sees this whole big picture, it's also associated with death and rebirth, and it's intense. It's really intense. Pluto, like, asks for surrender when we have a return, as we do right now. And we just have had hit one in February, exacted right around the 20th to the 20th February. And I think that was exactly when everything, within a day or two later, everything started amping up over there. So we've been dealing with that. Again, refer back to that video back in November, and you'll get all the nuts and bolts and more goodies. The blog will tell you more. Actually, that video is embedded in the blog at this point, so that's all there. But the value system of this country is going through a near-death experience. Every single facet of this country is going through a near-death experience. There's nothing that will remain untouched by the time all is said and done. Our hit 2 is coming in the summertime, shortly after we enter our 8th personal year as a nation. So this is something we're going to talk about the spring. And I know I guess we're not keeping this to 40 minutes tonight, but you know, what else is new? So when we enter July, well, it's the end of June, but we enter July, and July, about 5 days after the July 4th, we will have the exact again of this Pluto return, but this time it's going to be on a retrograde. So that's going to feel a little more bitey. And we have another direct hit coming up in December, and we have another direct hit next year. This is going to take a while because Pluto is so far out there. He's so far out there that because of his retrograde, he's just going to keep moving back and forth for a little bit. So this is what's going on in America. It's why things are like WTF right now. But as Adam said, we're just warming up. We have just started to hit the domino. They've been lining up for a very long time of how everything is going to change. And any system that isn't standing in some form of integrity, honesty, accountability, it will go. It will suffer great loss. That is what this is about. Because when you have the energy of Pluto in a sign like Capricorn, which is where it sits for the country, Capricorn is the sign of responsibility. And I think it's pretty obvious at this point, and it's a global thing. We know that it's not just an American problem, but it's all connected to what's going on globally. And America's got their hands in a lot of hats, you know. Let's just put it that way. Our leadership is not exactly up to snuff. So we're going to watch all kinds of fun stuff happen that way too. But it's the value of anything. It's the value of our leadership. It's the value of our education system. It's the value of our healthcare system. It's the value of anything. Of course, it's going to come down to money. That's going to be your other thing that you're going to notice is going. And we already know all of this is going on. Some of the things you are seeing in the news is not true. I mean, is true. It is true. It's we obviously know as we go to the gas pump today that the price of gas has indeed gone up. That is not the media telling us any kind of a lie. But the reason why it's going up is, I believe, not exactly being told the way that it could be. So there's that. But I'm not here to tell you what to think. I would like for you to think. And I would like people to ask questions, because the more you ask questions in life, the better off you are. Don't be afraid to ask any questions, because at this point, we're also being told we shouldn't be asking any questions. And I think that there's a problem with that. That's just my personal opinion, not a judgment. I think you should be allowed to ask questions. All right. So let's dive into spring. That's just like catches you up with what's cooking with America.
Yeah, I think we should be allowed to ask questions also. I agree with that. Thank you.
It just seems fair.
Yeah. I mean, I had a teacher, my first martial arts teacher, and one of his favorite quotes was, "Within every question lies its own answer, if you understand the nature of the question." So Sharita will now proceed to teach us, or to share with us, the nature of the question of what the F is going on this spring in the world.
WTF. So we entered spring. I've kind of coined it. We entered spring under a slowness. We're not just like, we opened up this 2022 year, mastering the value of compassion. Adam and I had talked to you, and Heather as well. We did workshops. We had gotten you very prepared for the opening gates of 2022, that we all knew how kind of whacked out that was going to be. We had Venus retrograde to open the year. Then Mercury popped in. We were in a 7 universal month in January. I mean, we just had all of this. Take it easy, take it slow. And, going back to that spinning in 9 energies that happened, that spinning time in 9 every 9 years, within the year itself, there's a pattern of how the numbers go. And this is, again, how energy can be interpreted. And that just allows your free will, which you still have. Because I've been hearing a few other things that they want to take away our free will. And I'm just like, oh, no. Oh, I don't think so. That's not how any of this works. So we popped out of the gate January of 22 in a 7 personal month, or universal month. I say 7 personal month because I'm so used to saying that with clients. But we were in a 7 universal month, which is why everybody felt January was just like, I don't want to talk to anybody. So quiet. It was a month to go within. It was a very, very contemplative month. We had double interplanet retrogrades. It was just nuts. February kind of, wasn't much better. That was an 8. It was still a very slowed kind of energy. And now we are in March. And now we're working with the 9. This is a 9 universal month. This is the warrior month. This is when, of course, we also I started watching conflict overseas. I mean, there's always conflict going on this planet, but we really had our attention brought to the conflict. And we, of course, have engaged in spring. Mars is in charge of a 9 month that we're in right now. We've got 10 days left at this point, as we've crossed the threshold of spring. And so what we're watching in March is there's a lot of closure going on. There's a lot of things ending, even if we're not getting it directly out of the horse's mouth, so to speak, or whatever the direct mouth would be at this point. But as we move into April, we are going into the 10. which is Wheel of Fortune energy. And if you are a tarot person, which of course we are all on tarot time every Sunday morning on the Medium channel at 11, the Chaldean numerology is loosely translated from the major arcana of the tarot. So if you understand, is it the chariot? Is that the chariot card? Is it the wheel? The wheel is 10? Is it, or it's the Wheel of Fortune?
The Wheel of Fortune is key 10 in the tarot, yes.
So it's the same thing. This
Yes,
is the Wheel of
yes.
Fortune too. Yeah, it's named. They didn't
It's
change the
ruled
name.
by
Some of them
Jupiter.
they
I know
changed
the
the
number
name.
10 is not ruled by Jupiter,
Yeah,
but the tarot card is.
yeah. So this is what we're looking at for coming up in April, and we're in the 1. So it's a sun-guided month. So we got light coming on things. I may not be exactly how we want to hear everything, I suppose. The sun is in Aries, as we, of course, we just crossed the threshold yesterday into spring. And happy spring, happy equinox, everybody, by the way. On that happier note, we want to stay happy as much as we can. It's challenging these days, though. That's undeniable. So the sun will later on in this month move into Taurus. So we've got the sun hanging out in Aries and hanging out in Taurus for this one universal month within our 6 mastering the value of compassion universal year. And that's that's the energy, the high energy of the year is it's the 6. It's a Venus guided year. So we're all about, we're really trying to pull out the compassion this year, pull out the understanding. But as we are continuously watching as a collective, that divide is still happening. That there's still, on the worst side of 6 energy, you have judgment, you have division, you're not standing in unity, you're standing, untied. And that's a lot of what we're trying to sort through as a collective this year. It's a collective healing year. Adam and I had talked about that as well at the beginning of this year. Where your love and your compassion and all these things are going to be very necessary. But as we're winding down March and we're looking at April, we're at a very pivotal point in this year, because this is where we're taking that 7, 8, 9 as we had started the year. And now we're really stepping forward in the foundation process of what 22 is actually about. So now we're starting on the 1 in April and moving in this way. Well, and of course, the first day of April, we move on a Aries new moon. We have a new moon, like boom, right there. It's going to be an energetic full moon. Energetic new moon. That one's going to conjunct Mercury. So that's going to be a little bit exciting. And this is something you'll if you go back to that Pluto video as well, we talked about, there was this holding pattern of the new and the full moon since last fall. We had all the full moons, by the way, were at this. I guess take my notes down so you can see. All the full moons since it was in late October. Yeah, late October's full moon in Aries, all the way through the one that just happened a couple days ago at the end of last week, the full moon in Virgo. 6 months from Aries to Virgo full moons, all aligned at 27 degrees of the sign. They held. Normally the moon will shift. It shifts the numbers every, next, the next peak or the next alignment. Everything got held for 6 months at 27 degrees. That was very significant for humanity right now. Now, the other thing is all the new moons were at 12 degrees for that time frame. They were at this 12 degrees. Now, this, again, I talk all about this in that Pluto video, so I don't want to try to double chat what I've already covered. But this was about about humanity being the kneeling, submissive student to honor what it means to be reachable and teachable, to avoid being sacrificing and avoid being the victim. Every new moon. Now, what happens on April Fool's Day is our moons finally move. Everything's moving. So we're going to notice all these numbers are going to change. They're not going to be at this holding pattern anymore. So we're going to have an 11 degrees Aries new moon on April 1st. So we start right off with this punchy new moon conjuncting Mercury. So there's something very wildly changing. And I don't know what's going to pop in on this new moon. Like, I don't see things like Adam in the exact experience, but I can tell you this energy is a bitey. And with this 11 degrees here, this tells me, now this is the energy of a lion muzzled, a clenched fist. It's a master number, but master numbers come with great responsibility. This is tricky. So there's something a little, whatever they're doing, they're going to try to shove more division at humanity is where I see this energy. And they want it to be a big change of some sort. And of course, being in a universal, we're in a 1 month, it's something that's very new that we're going to be seeing, or at least we'll be watching it unfold during that waxing phase. Because once we have a new moon, we're going to pull in new energy until we arrive at the the full moon, which in April will be in Libra on the 16th. And that full moon is going to be a little tricky because now we're going to pull off that 27 and we're shifting that degree point by the 16th of April to 26. Now this represents partnerships. This means, and this is interesting because this full moon is aligning in the sign that rules relationships overall. This is going to be tricky as well. And this full moon will square Pluto, which is going to be tension. So there's a lot of tension coming off this full moon. All these full moons have been everything. I mean, I don't know anybody over the one that just happened a couple days ago, but these last couple days were like, as we say, WTF? What's going on? But what's the reason for why all of these full moons are also very challenged, extra challenged, is because they're all connecting with the Pluto, the current Pluto. They're all connecting with the Pluto in the country's chart, but they're connecting with the current Pluto, which is back at the return, right? So each of these full moons coming in, because they're all in the latter part of a sign, they're all making an aspect to that Pluto month to month. The aspect just changes. So the full moon that we just had, the last one on, what was that? The 18th, it was the 18th of March. Yeah. I mean, that was like a whopper of a full moon. That aspect between Virgo and Pluto. So the Pluto in Capricorn. So it was a lot. Every time we keep getting these full moons, the emotional collective is just like, because when you connect Pluto and the moon together, you're going to get that death experience to a rebirth, but it's heavy and it's surging. And when we say, we always say a full moon is purging to begin with, but these full moons are like, excuse me, but I don't know how much more of this I can handle. So our emotions on the collective from all of these full moons have just been, They've been intense. That has been a lot of the reasons why every full moon is just like knocks our socks off for a little while, and then we kind of settle back down again. But these energies nothing's going away anytime soon. So we've got to keep, as Adam also keeps telling us, we have to double down on all of our spiritual practices. It's like sometimes he put out a video recently about, like, people want to just like quit what they're doing because they're just so fed up, and people are aggravated, and we are all, and I'm personally included, we're all getting, this is all new for all of us, because that old life that we all used to have, and however we had it, that life is never gonna go back. All of these energies, especially these full moons and how this has been happening, it just keeps turning the past away. It just keeps, nope, that's dead. Nope, that's dead too. That's dead. That's gone. No, it's not coming back. You're not going to get it back. We're all trying to figure out how to work with this new energy. And it's daunting, to say the least. It's challenging. It is not the easy breezy stuff. None of this is easy breezy. I'll tell you that as well from personal experience. I'm not having an easy breezy time either. I'm working with it, but wow, on some of the stuff that has to process, that has to, be purged or just be dealt with. And the whole planet is dealing with this in one way, shape, or another. And I mean, your personal forecast has a whole personal way, just like we're talking about America's chart and why the country is in such an upheaval right now. And we haven't even hit upheaval in this country yet. It hasn't even begun to bubble. It's like simmering right now. Like when you cook a pot of water on the stove and you just you're trying to get it to boil. Well, we haven't gotten to boiling yet. It's coming. So we're getting there. This is why we want everybody to be as prepared as possible. Again, this year promised, going back to the personal year cycle of the nation, it promised that this country was going to be dealing with, working with its mentality, working with keeping its mental health awareness. The more if all Americans would just meditate for 5 minutes a day, or even a minute, would be helpful. If everybody could hop on board with that, we could probably resolve what's going on in this country 10 times faster. But there's a lot of people who just resist all that, and they're not in that flow of what rising to a spiritual, kind of, my other catchphrase is never compromise living consciously. We need to live consciously right now. And it cannot be compromised if we're going to get through this. As a continuity, not even as American, but as a global citizen overall, we're not going to get through this if we're compromising living consciously. Because all of the past that we were used to, it just simply, it doesn't exist anymore. It's all changing. So we have to figure out how to work with this new stuff. It's the only way through. So again, April's going to start off, boom. We're starting this new month that's going to start to build a foundation until we reach July. July will be for the nation. I mean, I've America's forecast and the collective forecast are they're one number off of each other. So I get America stuck in my head here and there. So April is on the 1. America is in a 2 personal month for April. So It's going to be a little emotional in April in America, whatever's going on. We're going to start to, I mean, obviously everybody's heard, watch out for the food. Things are going to start to get maybe a little more scarce. I don't think we're in the total scramble of that yet, but what we're wise to do starting in April and now, whatever feels comfortable for you, get some extra things on hand. If you haven't done that already, make sure you can hang out for a bit if something did, whether it's the power grid would go out. I mean, there's all kinds of plausible scenarios. I don't know how it happens, when it happens, but we have all kinds of different plausibilities that could interrupt our regular routine. Let's just put it that way. So it doesn't hurt to be prepared as much as you can. It's more down the line of the year that we're going to notice there's a lot more empty shelves, and there's a lot more things that you may not even want to buy it because it's just out of the range of buying it. The cost of it will have increased so much. We've got a lot of that all happening, and this is all, again, the intensity of what will keep increasing with this Pluto return, with that second hit that will come in July. That's the one I think that's going to be like the shock wave that's going to go, oh boy, we got a problem here. So we've got a couple of months here. So if you're smart, you're going to take these couple of months and you're going to like gather up your rations, and just have some things around, because it's the wise thing to do. I've heard Adam say that as well. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, because it won't hurt you. And think wisely when you're preparing. Like, don't scurry and buy stuff that will go bad. Buy things that would last. Like, I know I do that when I go out and prepare. I make sure the expiration date is way ahead. You got to think about, like, hey, in an emergency, what would I be able to use anyway? You want stuff like that around. And if you need water and whatever it is that you need, everybody's living situation is very different. If you live in a city, you have a lot more to think about. If you live in the country, you have different things to think about. So it depends on where you are. Everybody's got a different story about how they need to prepare. So nobody can prepare the same exact way, because we're all unique and different. So yeah, April is there's going to be a lot of new things we're going to notice that are just going to be, all over and begun. There's little like seed planting of what they want to do and things that they want to like put out there to us. Again, that Libra full moon in the middle of the month, that's going to square Pluto. So that's going to be an intense one that will also affect this country's leadership. And it's going to have a direct conversation back to that Pluto again, the natal Pluto and the current one. That return will ease up a little bit, but not too much. It's only going to ever get like 2 degrees away from the natal when it's, pulling off of the direct 27 degrees. But there's something releasing in this country's leadership, and we don't know. I just think there's something by mid-April, we're going to watch some shift in who's in charge, or it could be any leadership organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be an actual person. It can be, the structure of something that has authority over anything. I could name a few lettered places that I think may be held accountable to a few things by mid-April, but we'll see. I don't know how this even censors anything on here, so I won't say anything that can get us in trouble. Now, what also starts in April is the approach to Mercury retrograde. So we got another one of them coming up. That's going to start on the 26th of April. And that Mercury retrograde is going to start May 10th. It's going to take us through June 3rd. That'll be in a span of Gemini, very early Gemini to very late Taurus is the time, is where it's going to be. You want to know where that's happening in your personal life, because that is very important. For America, this particular Mercury retrograde is going to be in the area of the country's chart where we serve. The country serves. So it's the workforce. It's absolutely about the healthcare system. We're going to notice a few interesting things going on with that. There's another very intense retrograde that'll close off 2022. I think that's when you will be shocked at what's going on October, November, December in this country, with what will have happened by then. But what we see happening under this particular Mercury retrograde is going to be like a preview of the fall's coming attractions. I'll just lay it out like that. So the workforce is going to change. The healthcare system is going to change. There's a lot of things building. Again, it's part of the value system that is going to be transformed by the Pluto return. Now, the very last day of April, we have a solar eclipse. This is going to be the one that we're going to have another, like, it's interesting. We're in this lunar month of the 10, the 1 in April, but that the degree point of this is going to be at 10 degrees, this solar eclipse. So this is in Taurus. This is going to bring in a big punch of new energy. Solar eclipses are, they take a new moon and they make it very intense. This is going to make a sextile to Mars over in Pisces. This is going to be an interesting eclipse. Could be a lot of interesting stuff happening. I think it's going to kind of fuel the country up a little bit. Now, this for America is going to be in our children. And this is going to ignite the heart space of the nation. So there's something coming that's going to put like a fire under people's like heart for the country. And it does affect children, and it affects it's your creative nature, but we have physical children in this country, obviously. There's some things happening with kids, so we need to watch for that. What's that about? And it also has a way that it works in the chart that it's going to pull in legalities and agreements. What I think is there's probably things where, we're going to have a lot of lawsuits and you're just going to notice a lot more things pulling in past April with lawsuits and different things like that. And again, this country's in a 2 personal month. So we're amping up our own emotions in many, many ways. So we move into May, and these numbers just keep coming back. They're all back and forth. So we're back in May of 2022 is back to this 11 thing again. It's 11 universal month. It's a 2. It's lunar guided. So this is where the emotions in May are going to be like, whoop. We're going to have everything lit up like a light bulb. Once again, in some emotional way. So all this new stuff that will pour out on a universal level in April, there's going to be like this emotional response to it come in May. So like people are going to be like, okay. And then of course that Mercury retrograde kicks in on the 10th. So that'll be like, whoa. And then the other thing that'll happen once the Mercury retrograde begins on the 10th is that we've got Jupiter will leave Pisces and enter Aries. Now, this to me is going to be, Jupiter is our truth planet. He's about being reachable and teachable. He's been hanging out in Pisces for a while now. but he's going to cross over into Aries on the 10th of May, the same day Mercury goes retrograde. And I think that's when like people will start the people who want their independence, the people who want their freedom, that's going to instigate a lot of that energy, because Jupiter going into Aries is a very freedom oriented truth. Get it out there. And so that's going to fire some things up a little bit. And then 5 days after that, you have a lunar eclipse and a full moon that's going to be at 25 degrees Scorpio. That'll be fun. And that happens to square Saturn in Aquarius. So we're going to go back to this. It's not that like the Taurus Aquarius thing that the Uranus and the Saturn have. They're wavering back and forth doing that here and there. But now we're looking at the Scorpio piece with Saturn in Aquarius. That'll be highly transformational, whatever is going down with that by that point. And that moon and lunar eclipse also makes a sextile back to that Pluto. Now then we'll be retrograde. Oh yeah, and Pluto turns retrograde on the 29th of April, the day before the solar eclipse, on the 30th. So forgot about that little point there. Pluto starts retrograding. So that's going to be fun. All these planets, if it's an outer planet and it retrogrades, it's not like what a Mercury or a Venus is, or what we'll be experiencing at the close of 22, which is the Mars retrograde, which will be in Gemini at that point. But the outer planet retrogrades are still significant to understand. They're much more of what's the word? It's not so much like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this and shouldn't be doing that. You don't feel the intensity of them like you feel them from a Mercury or the effects of that kind of thing. But nevertheless, when they're in play, they are important to understand. So we've got that lunar eclipse and full moon in May is very. This country, I mean, it really is in a healing. The healing starts to kick. And I think if there's a way that, like everybody's been like saying, oh, when do people understand more of whatever the truth is supposed to be? There's a lot of what I call inner processing for this country. I think you're going to get a lot more exposure of what has been hidden for a very long time off that lunar eclipse from Scorpio. And of course, Scorpio is a sign that guards all secrets anyway. But in the country's chart, it is going to purge in our the deep karmic wounds of the country, so to speak. So stuff from the deeper past may surface up that will be chit-chatted about or just need to be worked through. And it may not be anything you're going to see in a big, hoo-ha. It just may be things you're hearing about. Let's just put it that way. 22nd of May, the Mercury moves back into Taurus from Gemini on the retrograde. And then we wind down the month, and we have a new moon in Gemini. The Mercury retrograde is stationed at this point on the 30th of May. And then we are back at a 9-degree new moon. So the moons have gone from 12, 11 to 10, now to 9. So we have a very warrior-oriented new moon to close out May. And that one's going to conjunct the country's natal Uranus retrograde in the area of the workforce, and I serve. So if I don't know whether it's more so that there's a lot of mandates being thrown out or working but I believe we're going to get quite, or people are just, fed up with whatever it is that they're fed up with. But there's a new courage, a new something arising out of that new moon. And then we soon cross the threshold of June. June moves us into the 12. It's a 12 universal month. We're back in this 12 energy again. Can't get away from this one either. So it's a 3 energy. It's Jupiter. Jupiter is still in Aries. So everything is like, whew. Everybody's just, I believe at this point, like people are just fighting for freedom. Like they just want their freedom. They're going to start to realize there's just things going on here that we just can't, we've got June 3rd, Mercury will turn direct. Then June 4th, we've got Saturn turns retrograde in Aquarius. Now that will be happening as well, just a sign over from where the Pluto return is working for the US. Because the Saturn is still sitting on current transit, is still sitting in the same area as the Pluto for America. So that Saturn going backwards at that point, that's also going to work with the possessions, with what we have. It's going to like limit the values. That may be when you notice there's some, if the stock market may or may not, I'm not a financial astrologer, so I don't go there. But that may be when we notice things are really like at this point. If it hasn't happened before then, we may notice that's a very pivotal point for things to be a little tricky. So if there's going to be, or even just the fact that the value of the US dollar is just, we already all have heard that this is probably more than likely going to happen. I don't think it means we're going to lose every penny we own, but I think the value of the dollar will significantly drop during this experience. That's obviously positioned to happen. And with the way all the financial things are going otherwise. So that's all happening early June. By mid-June, on the 14th of June, we have a full moon in Sagittarius. That's also the birthday of a president. I won't mention names because that God knows if you can even get censored for saying that at this point. But if you know whose birthday is on June 14th, who is a Gemini, who was in office before the one we've got now, he has a full moon on his birthday this year. That should be interesting.
That won't be censored. You can say the name. Although I think everybody's figured out exactly who we're talking about now.
Yeah, so June 14th is Donald Trump's birthday. And in fact, it's a very because he has in his chart, so basically that full moon is going to oppose his sun directly, but he has a natal Sagittarius moon, so that is going to conjunct his moon and oppose his sun, because he was born on a full moon as well. He had a full moon energy around the day he was born. So that's going to light him up somehow like a light bulb. Whatever anybody wants to say about the man, like I said, I don't tell you what to think, who to think about, but that is his birthday. There's something very like that's rather interesting. In any case, for America, that full moon hits in our approaches to life. So it's going to take away more ways that we are accustomed to doing things, that we're used to doing things. There's a lot of aspects. I know we're running out of time at this point. There's a lot of aspects that moon is making in the country's chart. It's making a bunch of squares. It's making oppositions. So I think by the middle of June, we will have gotten to a point. I don't want to say it's like just chaotic, but where the US is we're in a 4 month in June. And if you see this image, this is about what this is what's going down in June. It's just kind of this established structure is on its way to just going where it needs to go. And we're in, as a nation, we're in a 5 month for just those first few days before we go into our 8 year, which is going to be very interesting because I don't know what kind of harvest we're going to have, because I don't think this country did the inner work it needed to do over the past year, which is what Healing America from Within was about. And it didn't get done. Not that I can see. So I think we're going to, have to there'll be another whole piece coming of what the 8 year means, because that's Saturn going to be in charge of America's year after that. And that also ties into the Pluto return. So there's just more things about money values and all the established systems that just we're going to need to learn our lessons from the experience as a nation. Yeah, so that Sagittarius full moon in the middle of the month is going to be pretty intense once again. By the 18th, a few days later, the shadow of Mercury retrograde completes. And then we finish the month off just before, we're technically in summer at this point because we enter summer on the 22nd. But as of June, we will have a 7 degrees. Then we'll move back to 7 degrees of a Cancer new moon on the 28th. And that one is going to square the Jupiter in Aries. So that's going to be very interesting because that also connects for us as a country. It's going to be up in our legalities, but then it's going to connect to our environments. So there's some things going on there for the country that are going to be a little tricky. But globally, again, I think people wanting their freedom this spring is going to be people are just gonna start fighting for it. I think they've been kind of under a slumber all winter, and not that obviously we've seen things and people are, we saw what was going on up in Canada. We see that here with the truckers here, for example. There are people standing up. There are people doing movements. There are things like this happening. But what we've been seeing has been very, I think, sort of light and delicate in comparison to what is about to happen. I think the spring is going to unleash an entire wave and new momentum of energy of how humanity will try, at least hopefully, to fight back. Because I don't think humanity's really fought back yet, not in the way that it's going to. That's just my, personal experience. And then on that 28th of June new moon, you've got Neptune. So Pluto went retrograde over this time, Saturn went retrograde, and Neptune will go retrograde on the 28th of June. So then you're going to have 3 outer planets in retrograde as we start the summer. And then we'll have, more coming in when we get into the other part of the summer. But so fun.
Yes. We had a question. Let me get back to.
Sure. Fire away, as I like to say.
There we go. You can see the screen, right? Or
Yvonne, excellent question. It's going to change in many ways. I mean, on the plus side of it, I think there's a huge holistic movement for doctors. I mean, we if you're looking around and there are many doctors who are not on board with the present way that the healthcare system is structured. They understand that there's something not quite right with all of this, and they're not about the power, they're not about the greed. That part of the system is what will end up collapsing at some point. I mean, or it's just going to be just a divided kind of situation, and you will have people who will just keep following that. And then you will have people who will stand over on the other side and they'll go, hey, you know what? I have immunity. I have this. I like holistic approaches. And I'm not going to get raped by an insurance company or whatever the case is. So the changes as well, I think there's going to be so many lawsuits that they won't know what to do, to be perfectly honest. And when we have this Mars retrograde later in the year, that it ranks this country's healthcare system something fierce. And by early January of 23, I mean, if it's still standing like it is right now, I'd be highly surprised. I mean, it's going to go through quite some ugliness being exposed. And I mean, I know from the things I've, thoroughly researched, not conspiracy theories. There is some horrible things that have been going on in our healthcare system for years. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Again, I'm not here to tell anybody what to think. You can look up what you want, or send me an email if you're curious of what I've seen. But there's a lot of corruption, let's just put it this way. And I think that's about to, some people just aren't going to, people just aren't going to buy it anymore, and some people will, and that's perfectly fine. And it's perfectly fine. There is, Adam and I had this conversation on a separate level. I mean, we are here raising the collective, and we're here understanding there's a great awakening going on, but not everybody's going to get the awakening. And we have to accept that about people, and it's not a judgment against them. If they don't want to do that in this lifetime, if it's not in their soul contract, there's nothing we can force about it. So we just hold love and light and space and compassion for people. But sometimes we're going to stand in a different place than somebody else will because of what we want to believe. And 2022 is definitely going to separate where people want to stand in their life. There's no question about that. I hope that answers the question, Yvonne.
Yeah, that feels spot on to me, and everything you've said about that, about what's going on, it's totally resonates and parallels what Spirit's been saying and what I've been sharing on my live streams and everything. So it's good to have like the backing of I don't know if you'd call it science. I mean, it is scientific anyway.
It's math. I call it math. It's just a bunch of math.
Yeah, it's numbers. And whether it's numerology or astrology, it's numbers, and it's all predicated on that binary code, that 0 and 1. And all of reality builds from those fundamental building blocks. So it's all there. The point I'm trying to make is it's all there. If you know how to read, if you know the language, you can, I wouldn't say know God's plan, but have a pretty good idea of the building blocks of God's plan. And really, from where I'm sitting, the plan is for us to awaken, for us to move into our next level. And humans in this experience learn more from challenge than anything. And you're like
we're going to learn a lot.
Yeah, like Jeff Bridges said as Starman in that movie.
Putting it lightly at this point.
Yeah, Miss Pandolver was the actress, and he was the alien, and he I love this line from Starman where he says, "You know what I find beautiful about you humans is that when things are at their very worst, you're at your very best." Well, hopefully things won't be at their very worst, but the idea is, who you really are is going to come out,
Yes.
because of, that you can't be in your comfort zone anymore. You have to be able to accept that, and
Yeah.
we feel comfortable as a survival instinct. Yeah. Meanwhile, the powers that be are dangling that new normal carrot in front of our faces. But if you
I don't know
understand
about the new
words,
normal. That's just not my new normal.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, Sharita's an expert in lexigrams and in words and stuff like that. When you hear the word normal, everything's programming. Understand, everything is freaking programming. And they're saying, well, we'll get the vaccine card, we'll get this, we'll get that. And of course, I have no opinions one way or another about getting vaccinated. Do what's right for you, obviously. But when you hear all that, that new normal, you hear the word normal, it's like, I can relax because the subconscious likes normal, likes
yes.
things to be regular and
Yeah.
predictable because it's the survival instincts. You hear new normal, the subconscious makes you feel like, oh, thank God there's a new normal. I'll do whatever they say for that new normal. So be watch out. Anyways,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
uh
Yeah, because new normal may be giving up your all of the control that you have actually. So,
yeah, I think
you know,
what's it called? Metaverse, um A AI, this the
oh,
what's
that's
the
yeah, and I
synthesis of
mean,
artificial and human
there's
intelligence.
there's a gentleman I've seen recently, Harari, I think his name is. That blows me out of the water. I'm like, I mean, he literally says that we're like machines, and I mean, he just goes, I mean, I don't have it memorized, but I was like, and there was one statement I clearly got because of course, I mean, I teach free will, so I'm just like, oh my God, you can't. And he says, no, the humans are not going to have free will, and they're going to be la 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 la. And I'm like, huh? What do you mean? What do you mean I'm not going to have free will? Are you nuts? Like
I
no.
just have
He's like,
one word for that
I'm
whole
not signing
thing.
up for this. I'm sorry. Get me off the planet, please.
Yeah,
Where are those
perhaps
aliens again? Please come in the backyard. you know.
perhaps the people that are pushing for that never saw the movie Terminator.
Ah, yeah.
Hey,
Supposedly
hello, not a good idea. Well,
yeah.
anyway, laughter's the best medicine, and that, yeah, and keeping our mirth and our humor is really going to get us through these times. And remember, it's an awakening. It's something we chose as a collective. We chose individually to be here. Yeah, it sounds dark. It sounds tough or whatever. Just like you're hiking up that mountain, just set the intention to get through the day, and then get through the next day, and get through the next day, and we're going to be fine. And yeah, what we're doing on the channel, and a lot of people are doing, is we're creating community. And in fact, this Wednesday we're going to do another guided meditation where my guides activate my energies, and then as I'm leading the process, that'll activate your energy field. So we work with the heart, and then we project that into the collective, and that helps the collective consciousness. That helps people to wake up. That helps people to see things through the eyes of their heart, through the eyes of compassion, the eyes of love, including theoretically one day maybe the powers that be and the ones that are creating all this mayhem in the first place. So we're doing this, and thousands of other groups are doing the same thing.
Yes,
Me
there's
and this
so
small
many.
group,
I mean, there are
so
good
many. So
people,
we're keep doing it. Keep Don't
communities out
accept
there.
like